Discrimination and police brutality are nothing new, but last summer we saw racial unrest unlike anything we've seen before, which forced more of us to confront Canada and the United States' long history of racism. Public opinion of racism and discrimination quickly shifted in the wake of the protests, with a huge jump in support for the Black Lives Matter movement and acknowledgement of institutional racism, especially on social media. But has any of that support resulted in meaningful change? That's the question. Dr. Moya Bailey and Sandy Hudson are here to discuss this with me now. And I'm going to start with you, Moya. You have been studying hashtag activism for years, and you actually co-wrote a book about it that was published before we saw this surge of this phenomenon last summer. So how do you define hashtag activism, and what about last summer was different, if anything, than what's come before?
Hashtag activism is a tool that leverages people's use of digital media to support the activism that they're already doing on the ground. It's a combination of using digital platforms to increase and bolster messages that are happening in real life or IRL that people are organizing around via the different social media platforms that they're using. And one classic example of hashtag activism that people can immediately recognize is the use of the names of people who have been killed by police violence. Has been a way that people have understood hashtags as an important means to get a message out and across. So something that was perhaps different about last summer was the succession of these hashtags used in a few weeks in a tight moment. So we're thinking about the death of George Floyd, the death of Breonna Taylor, and then even more recently, if we look to recent events, we can think about the death of Moya Bailey.
Okay, so let's talk about hashtag Blackout Tuesday. So the day Instagram turned black. In just a few hours, more than 14.6 million black squares flooded Instagram. If we're talking about online actions that helped or hurt the movement, where does this one fall? And I'll give this one to you, Sandy.
You know, things are rarely as easy as helped or harmed. And I like to think about Blackout Tuesday in three different ways. So one is that as an activist, any sort of feedback that I get from popular culture, from the media, is helpful for me to understand how my work is impacting the broader public. So knowing that people wanted to do something and show some sort of support helps me understand that my message is popular. That's one. The second thought that I get is that people are interested in doing something, and by seeing a number of other people doing something on social media, it kind of diffuses maybe some nervousness around saying something or taking a position about something. It makes it seem more popular, makes it seem like you're not doing something against the mold, which is also helpful. All that being said, I was frustrated about Blackout Tuesday because it's so simple. It's so easy as a show of solidarity to just put up a black square. Whereas it might be harder to say something like defund the police, or we need a new mental health emergency service, or stop killing Black people. You know, these types of phrases that we've come up with that are kind of policy asks. They're asking the government and the powers that be to take concrete action to make this stuff stop. That's riskier. And that's the kind of thing that we really want to see in solidarity actions, a true call for some sort of justice.
There's this opportunity for things to become very misguided if it's just about a performative square or a performative post. And I'm wondering, Dr. Bailey, how do we sort of distinguish, whether these sorts of initiatives actually help?
So who is actually moving the initiative forward and who's actually calling for the initiative. Accomplice or solidarity actions that are built by people who are not following the lead of those most affected usually fall flat.
Good point, Dr. Bailey. And Sandy, I'm just going to ask you, you say that you sort of need to check back and make sure that you're in line with what's happening with the activists.
Yeah, I completely agree here. I think that there's a way that when activism becomes popular, people just want to jump in and they just want to do something. And I understand that. You know, you have this inclination, this burning desire to contribute to the good. And what we can't forget is that there have been people doing that work and preparing for these moments in the in-between times when these things aren't popular. And they have done so much work to try to figure out what is the best way forward, what is the best things that we can ask for, what are the most useful things that we can do. And it is so critical to check in with those people, because if we really do want to be making the best sort of contribution to the good in all of this, it is really crucial to check in with those activists on the ground who have been doing this for years.
You talked about sort of hashtag activism normalizing certain things, and that's sort of part of the way that they help. So in 2020, there were many posts urging the government to defund or even abolish the police, something BLM has been calling for years and years and years. Here in Toronto, we saw defund the police protests. So what actions have police forces across Canada and North America taken to show accountability, and what work still needs to be done? I'll start with you, Sandy, for this one.
I mean, police haven't really done much, and that's unsurprising. The problem lies with the fundamental construction of how police operate, how they're made up, all of it. So I don't expect them to do anything. Where I'm looking is at governments and policymakers. Those are the folks who we need to be taking action to do things. You know, I wish we were so much farther along than we are, but there has been a lot of concrete change made. You know, most recently in the last couple of weeks, the city of Vancouver deciding to remove cops from schools. And we've had these sorts of decisions bubbling up since the summer of 2020. These sorts of really big changes, I think, tell me that we are marching in a direction towards the ultimate success of the campaign. I don't think you can stop this moving train.
Dr. Bailey, I want to talk a little bit about traditional media and traditional media coverage. Do you think that traditional media has contributed anything meaningful when it comes to change? And if so, how? And if not, why?
Yes, I think we saw, especially during the freedom struggles of the 1960s in the United States, that traditional media had a really important role to play in broadcasting to the world some of the atrocities that were happening in North America and how Black people were being treated. What I'm really interested in are the transformative justice practices that we can see glimpses of in the media that people create for themselves. In my forthcoming book, Transforming Misogynoir, or Misogynoir Transformed, we're looking at how Black women are using YouTube and other platforms to create the media that they want to see. And in that media, we see lots of examples of what everyday abolition can look like.
Dr. Bailey, we have talked about your work before on the show, and we are so happy you could join us today. Sandy, we're so happy for the work you're doing on the front lines. Thank you, both of you for joining us today. Fascinating conversation and so much to think about.